Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 85, coming at you from the valley on this beautiful Thursday evening. One heck of a weekend in UFC MMA action, and one heck of a weekend for me. But I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. But yeah, life is good. We got a rainy day today, which here in the desert, seems like I don't know the last time we got rain. But this past week, 80 degrees and beautiful. Got to go to my first waste management PGA event. Got to hang out on hole 16. Watch Scotty Scheffler, Ricky Fowler, and a couple groups with a buddy. That was fantastic. On Friday, went to the Utah Jazz Phoenix Suns game. Kevin Durant was out, but the Suns celebrated Devin Booker for being the highest scoring Sun of all time. And the Jazz went into overtime. It was a pretty crazy game. Saturday, went down south to Tucson, caught my first Arizona college basketball game. The energy, the aura, the noise. Man, the Wildcat fans are serious business. That was one hell of an atmosphere to experience. It was 20th ranked Arizona, 13th ranked Texas Tech. Now they're 12 and 13. Texas Tech 12, Arizona 13. So fantastic experience that was in my real first big college basketball experience. And then Sunday, Super Bowl, won my preseason bet. I said the Eagles will beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl before the season started. So I turned $25 into $2,500. So one hell of a weekend. This weekend, for all you relationship people, we got Valentine's Day. I'm going to golf, catch some ASU wrestling for the first time, as Arizona State has some good wrestling, and just prepare as I have some family and friends visiting the next couple of weeks. But enough about me. Let's jump in and talk MMA. We have some fights that have been announced. We have Daniel Zellhuber and Elves Brenner on March 29th. As well as Manuel Torres and Drew Dober, two absolute bangers in Mexico. That should be so much fun. We have Joanderson Brito and Pat Sabatini April 5th. We have Josh Emmett booked against Lerone Murphy. That is an absolute fucking fantastic fight. For UFC 314 in Miami, we got Sumaderi and Mitch Raposo, as well as Darren Elkins and Julian Arosa. UFC 315, we have announced back in Edmonton, we have Brad Katona and Bekzat Almakhan. And then there's been absolute chaos the past few days for the UFC Seattle card. I lived in Seattle for 8 years, never got to catch a UFC event there. With the new arena, I thought it'd be good to go back if the card was worthy. I did not think the card's worthy with the timing of my new job and all the things I have going on. But man, I'm glad I didn't book it because it's been bad. We've had Macy Chiasson out of her fight against Ketlin Vieira, so that fight is off the card. For some reason, the UFC has moved the Curtis Blades Rizvan Kuniev fight from UFC Seattle to UFC 313. And then officially out today, Edson Barboza, who was supposed to fight Steve Garcia, potentially the best fight on that card. But they made some short-term turnarounds. We have Alonzo Manifield and Julius Walker, as well as Nursultan Ruzaboev and Eric Maconio Jr. So Alonzo Manifield, Nursultan Ruzaboev, some quality talent back on that Seattle card. And Michael Chiesa never got an opponent. So yeah, taking some hits to UFC Seattle. Last week in a UFC 312, we had the Israel Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum fight inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, which was funny because as I was writing my script preparing for last week's episode to preview UFC 312, I happened to just watch local channels and see that UFC Unleashed was on, which was recapping that fight. And man, it was just a doozy. Very well deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. And Bill Algeo has gone to social media on X to announce he will be retiring from the UFC. So no more action from Senor Perfecto, Bill Algeo. But let's talk a bit about what went on down under. We had UFC 312, Business and Buckets Umbrella, Bows and TKOs is hotter than ever. Going 8-2-1 in my picks. Very close with the draw. Could have been even better at 9-2. But overall, we are 515 wins, 250 losses, more than doubled up. 8 no contests and draws. On the year, 31 wins, 9 losses. Dang near tripled up. 1 no contest or draw. To recap this pay-per-view, which was not super highly anticipated, one of the more lackluster talented pay-per-views from top to bottom. There really was only 3 good fights on this card, and they weren't great, didn't turn out to be great fights. 3 finishes on the entire card. 2 of them, the fights never really got going as they ended quickly. Sean Strickland just kind of pussed out, although there was a staph infection issue. Clearly he had staph. They didn't talk too much about it. And then Zhang Weilei outclassed Tatiana. 4 out of 10 I gave it. I think I previewed it. Maybe even a 4 out of 10 as well. But some good fights we did not break down. We had Quillan Selkeed with a round 1 knockout over Anshul Jubli. We had Alexandre Topuria, Ilya Topuria's older brother, with a unanimous decision over Colby Thickness. That was a solid fight. As well as this one, Tom Nolan, unanimous decision over Vyacheslav Borshev. And then to start the pay-per-view, a solid performance by Jake Matthews, unanimous decision over Francisco Prado. But we'll kick this off in the early prelims where we got fight of the night. The young Rong Zhu with unanimous decision over Cody Steele. Fight of the night, 50 G's. I had picked Cody Steele, but I am not surprised by this result. I'm a big Rong Zhu fan. And I did not expect Cody to only get 1 takedown in this fight. You do have to credit Rong Zhu for his takedown defense, but he turned this fight into a slugfest, and it seemed like the older Cody Steele fell into the trap. He didn't focus on his strengths, what had got him to this point. But you do wonder sometimes if age makes that happen. You know, Rong Zhu's only 24, although he's experienced. Cody, 30. You know, there's kind of the ego in you. You're a fighter. You're the best in the world, fighting a 24-year-old, and he just out-scraps you. I wonder sometimes if that plays part. But Rong Zhu has really improved his entire game. That was clearly on full display. Cody got his takedown in round 1, but Rong Zhu was able to reverse him, get up, and really dominated the striking throughout the rest of the fight in rounds 2 and 3. He even got a knockdown in round 2 and almost got a finish. But Cody from there just tried to swing and fling with him, but that was definitely not the smartest move, and the stats will back that up. Rong Zhu landed 126 strikes, 125 of them significant. He had the reversal and a takedown. And Cody landed 59 total insignificant strikes with 1 takedown and 4 attempts. So Rong Zhu starts a new winning streak. He moves to 4-1 since 2023. He's 1-1 in his UFC return. And Cody ends his 2-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He's 1-1 in the UFC. So what's next? Well, Rong Zhu and Jordan Levitt would be a good scrap. And for Cody, he could bounce back against Austin Hubbard. But jumping into the prelims, we had Wang Kong with a unanimous decision over Bruno Brazil. And, you know, Bruno definitely started the fight well, chopping the lead leg of Wang, but she went away from it. And Wang got her fair share of calf kicks later in the fight and absolutely just took it to Bruno with her kickboxing. But Wang was just coming forward, seemed to have Bruno froze as she did not bring much volume or take many chances. But as bad as Wang's leg was early in the first round, you'd think she'd go back to it, and she just didn't do it. Statistically, Wang landed 104 total strikes, 103 of them significant. She was 2 for 2 in takedown attempts. and Bruno only landed 31 total insignificant strikes. That's 10 strikes around, most of those in the first. Again, I don't know what it was, but she just was not being offensive, and Wang ended up landing 70 more strikes. But Bruno was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts as well. So Wang starts a new winning streak. She's 6-1 since 2023, 2-1 in the UFC. And Bruna starts a new losing streak. She is 3-3 in the UFC. So where do these ladies go next? I think Wang and Veronica Hardy would be a good fight. And for Bruna, she could take on Julia Stolarenko. Also in the prelims, we had Gabriel Santos with a round 3 submission via rear naked choke over Jack Jenkins. And Jack came out hot, man. He landed just a beautiful head kick right on the top of Gabriel's head, sat Gabriel on his ass, but he was able to somehow recover as Jack had closed distance. Gabriel was able to hold him in his guard, get back, recover, and really just hold Jack down, but he was even able to get back up to his own feet by the end of the round. Moving into round 2, Gabriel was able to dominate as he started to take Jack down and was outstriking him through rounds 2 and 3. And really just a brilliant, well-rounded performance by Gabriel, especially starting off in such a bad spot. Statistically, Jack landed 39 total strikes, 34 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 with the 0 for 1 in takedown attempts, had a knockdown and 2 minutes and 20 seconds of control time. And Gabriel landed 96 total strikes, so triple from Jack. Only 39 of them significant, 5 more than Jack. But he had 4 takedowns and 7 attempts. If he got it, he wanted it. 2 submission attempts and 6 minutes and 19 seconds of control time. So 2 submission attempts, 4 takedowns, and over a round of control. That was the big difference. But Gabriel extends his winning streak to 2. He's an even 2-2 since 23. And Jack starts a new losing streak. He moves to 4-2 in the UFC. The fight I would love to see, Gabriel and Hakeem Dawodu. I think that would be a fantastic fight. And for Jack, how about Josh Kulabau? I think that would be a great matchup. Moving on into the main card, we had Jimmy Crute with the majority decision draw with Rodolfo Bellato. And, bummer we get a draw. You would never have thought that after round 1. A lot of guys at the big round 1, not everyone was able to finish because Jimmy really blasted Rodolfo. And because of that, he was like eyes rolled back, all kinds of shaky. He just, I think, overspent his energy trying to get the finish in round 1. But somehow, as tough as Rodolfo is, he was able to survive for over 3+ minutes. But it was scored a 10-8 round for Jimmy, and deservedly so, because he needed all of that 10-8. Round 2 was a razor-close finish of a round. Very back-and-forth affair. Both men definitely tired from what had transpired in round 1. But the big win for Rodolfo was defending the takedown attempts that Jimmy brought. And, I did think Rodolfo landed a little bit more volume, especially on Jimmy's lead leg. Midway through round 2, that was already chop suey. He was changing stances, just toughing it out. And then round 3, Rodolfo continued to chop at Jimmy's leg, and I think he did enough, mixed with actually getting a takedown of his own because Jimmy was so tired in round 3. I think that's what made it a draw. Round 2 is super close, but I did give it to Rodolfo for the kicks. And then round 3, Rodolfo won. So 10-8 round 1, rounds 2 and 3 to Rodolfo. But it's really sad for Crute, who's had a draw recently in his last couple of years. He did so good in round 1 and just looking for any kind of, moment of inspiration, as he hasn't won since 2020. But statistically, Jimmy landed 139 total strikes, 106 of them significant. He was 0 for 3 in takedowns, had the knockdown, and 3 minutes and 52 seconds of control time. Now, Rodolfo landed 95 total strikes, 89 of them significant, and he was 1 for 2 in takedown attempts. So Jimmy is 2-3-2, looks like a soccer record, since 2020. Again, that's when he had his last win. And Rodolfo is now 2-0-1 in the UFC. Now, I'm not opposed to them running this back. Probably won't happen though. So I'm going to go with Jimmy and Marcin Prochnio, and Rodolfo can square up with the Contender Series alum Navajo Sterling. Moving on, we had the big boys, and boy, did this not last long, as Taliesin Teixeira had a round one knockout over Justin Tafa. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Taliesin. And Taliesin just came forward and put Tafa up against the cage and landed a nasty knee to have him bite down, and just straight forearm elbowed the shit out of him that put Tafa down. He was covering up, and because of that, the official had called the fight. It was early. Maybe you could have said he could have a chance, but when you're down on your knees, hands over your head, just doing this, I mean, I don't think it was a bad stoppage. He was just going to let Taliesin rain down a ton more damage on him anyways. But yeah, very slight work for Taliesin. So much so that Justin didn't even land a strike in this fight. Taliesin, 9 total strikes, 8 of them significant, and was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. But Justin now extends his losing streak to 2. He's 2-2-1 since 2023. And Taliesin stays undefeated. He extends his winning streak to 8, 2-0 in the UFC. A quick rise for the young fighter. So what's next? Well, I think Justin and Muhammad Usman is the fight to make. And for Taliesin, he can take on Janata Deniz, as he will now be fighting in the rankings. Still a young fighter too, but quick, slight work. You want to give Taliesin all the credit, but I think some of that falls on Justin too, just a flat performance. Then we had the 2 championship fights. I tried to tell y'all, put your money on Zhang Weilei, because she got the unanimous decision over Tatiana Suarez. I cannot believe the disrespect with the odds makers. But Tatiana was able to come out and get a takedown early. That's what the odd makers probably thought would happen. But it ended up being her only takedown, and it wasn't because of a lack of effort on the evening. But even when she got Zhang down, she was just not able to do much with it besides stay on top. Zhang was able to actually get back up towards the end of the round and let her hands fly. And that was the story of rounds 2 and 3, as she completely shut down Tatiana's grappling efforts and just out-kickboxed the crap out of her. And then round 4, Zhang actually got her own takedown and was able to wear on Tatiana and just had her gassed out by round 5. And she just poured it on Tatiana trying to get a finish. But Tatiana's tough. And again, I was just shocked that Zhang was the underdog. She proved why she should not be, because her striking was levels above Suarez. Suarez only landed 12 significant strikes the entire fight, and without takedowns and top control, she had nothing left. Really no opportunities to find an opening in this fight. Just dominant display by Zhang Weilei. Stats speak for that too. Zhang landed 232 total strikes, 53 of them significant. She was 1 for 3 in takedown attempts, a submission attempt, and 10 minutes and 54 seconds of control time. And Tatiana landed 63 total strikes, 12 of them significant. She had 1 takedown in 15 attempts. That's some Merab Dvalishvili numbers and some brilliant takedown defense from Zhang Weilei. And Tatiana, most of the first round, had 5 minutes and 56 seconds of control time. So the dominant champion, Zhang, extends her winning streak to 5. This is her 3rd consecutive title defense. Tatiana suffers her first pro loss. That ends her 10-fight winning streak. She moves to 7-1 in the UFC and moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 2. Now what's next? Well, Zhang doesn't have a clear opponent unless Virna defeats Yan Xiaonan. So I do think this is the time to make the Zhang Weilei-Valentina Shevchenko fight. It might not be as clear as day in the future. This is a brutal situation for Manon Fiorot. I would hate that for her. She's very well deserving of the title fight, but that's just how it happens sometimes. And for Tatiana, a matchup with Mackenzie Dern, that seems like the fan favorite affair to make and makes a ton of sense. Then into the main event, another dominant champion performance. Dricus du Plessis with the unanimous decision over Sean Strickland, 2-0 against the former champion. And for me, Sean Strickland is so much Sean Strickland. Just as I expected, he fought the exact same way he did in the first fight. The biggest difference was that DDP was more aggressive early, as he really didn't get going until round 3. And he did a real good job in mixing in his attacks and finding a way to put Sean on his back foot and walk him back by finding a different way to parry his jab. He was doing wide hooks to the body to push Sean back, then coming in over the top. And I'm surprised that there was only 1 takedown landed in this fight in 2 attempts. I thought DDP would have shot more, and the way the fight went, rounds 4 and 5 especially, Sean should have looked for his own takedowns. But that's just the way Sean fights. I was impressed, as expected, by the improvement that DDP showed, the willingness to innovate and make change. And Sean obviously did what Sean did. There has been some viral moments this week as Eric Nixick went on the Ariel Helwani show and said how lack of effort he had, and that if he doesn't continue to try to be better and try to be a champion, he wouldn't want to corner him. Now Sean Strickland saying he doesn't want Eric to corner him anymore for doing that. Lots of drama there, but Sean just had no life in him. Didn't even try. I mean, when you're down 3 rounds, especially, or even into the 3rd round, you got to mix it up. Try for something. Like, what else are you doing? But by the time round 4 came, DDP completely shut Sean down by shattering his nose. Supposedly it broke in 6 different places. And that really put the fight over the edge as he's just dripping blood the entire fight. I thought it was a clean 5-round sweep for the champion. And still. Now, statistically, DDP landed 149 total strikes, 147 of them significant, with 1 takedown and 2 attempts. And Sean landed 128 total and significant strikes. So Dricus, this is wild, man, extends his winning streak to 11, 9-0 in the UFC. He's defended his title twice now. And Sean starts a new losing streak. He moves to 4-2 since 2023 and moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 2. So what's next? I do think it has to be Dricus and Khamzat Chimaev. That's the next best thing, the biggest showdown possible for the UFC to make. And for Sean, I think he should fight Robert Whittaker, which seems like a fight that should have happened. Robert Whittaker could have also be fighting Nasruddin Imavov. So it's hard to say, but I would love to see Sean and Robert clang and bang. But yeah, pretty lackluster card. The 2 title fights just were very dominant and lopsided. A couple quick first-round finishes, a majority draw, some decent decisions, but really the fight of the night in the early prelims, what a showing by Rong Zhu that turned into a bar fight. He was a pretty big underdog as well. Definitely messed up my parlays. But this weekend, we're back to the Apex, everyone's favorite place. We have UFC Fight Night Vegas 102, a little bit earlier of a card. The prelims starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, the main card at 4 p.m. Pacific. This is only an ESPN Plus event, which is going to be really interesting as the UFC's TV rights are coming up. So we'll see if that stays with ESPN. But to preview this card, I would say the main card's solid for a fight night. There's some great stylistic matchups. The prelims have a couple fun fights as well. So I'm previewing this a 6 out of 10. Some good fights we will not break down. We have Dana White Contender Series alum Rafael Estevam taking on Jesus Aguilar. We have Vince Morales in his second run with the UFC taking on Contender Series alum Elijah Smith. We have a short notice opponent, I want to make sure this is right, for Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon is fighting Mashrabjan Ruzaboev. And then we also have Contender Series alums going at it, Connor Matthews and the local MMA lab, Jose Delgado, that I'm super excited about. So that will be fun. Let's make sure I have the right Gordon matchup here. Yep. Marshabjan Ruzaboev. So lots of Contender Series action. We'll kick this off in the prelims, though. A top 15 affair. We have Julia the Raging Panda Avila, 36 years old with a 9-3 record and the number 12 next to her name, taking on Jacqueline Calvacanti, 27 years old with an 8-1 record and the number 13 next to her name. Now, I think Jacqueline has looked great in her young UFC career, even though her last 2 wins have come via split decision. But Julia is trying to keep her place in the rankings and is desperate for a win since her last one was back in 2021. So this should make for a good fight. Julia has a brown belt in BJJ. She's an Invicta alum. She's on a 1-fight losing streak. She's 1-1 since 2021. 4 of her 9 wins are via knockout. And Jacqueline is a PFL and LFA alum. She's a former LFA champion. She's on a 6-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC since 2023. And honestly, I'm not too sure what to expect from Julia, as her last fight was over a year ago, and she was out-grappled by the veteran Miesha Tate, and she shouldn't have to worry about that style in this matchup here. But I do expect Jacqueline to have the speed advantage. Julia may still have the power advantage, but this smells awfully close to a very close split decision. But I am going to take the younger, fresher, and more active fighter. I'm taking Jacqueline Cavalcanti, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Then moving on in the prelims. We have Dontel Lord Kong Mays, 33 years old with an 11-7-1 record and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Walter the Clean Monster Walker, 27 years old with a 12-1 record. Now here, we're really getting 2 heavyweights who are looking to get things going in the UFC. Walter more so because he's newer to the promotion. He is coming off a first-round finish, while Dontel is trying to get back on the winning track and defend his spot in the rankings. Breaking it down, Walter is a Titan FC alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 1-1 in the UFC, and 6 of his 12 wins are via knockout. Now, Dontel trains out of Jackson Wink MMA. He's an RFA, LFA, and Contender Series 3-time alum. He's been on the hard path to the promotion. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-3 since 2023. 6 of his 11 wins are via knockout, and he does have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Dontel is showcased to be more of a well-rounded fighter, but I think he will look to make this fight ugly, try to clinch, dirty box, and wear on the younger Walker. If he could get him down, I don't expect Walter to be able to get back up either. But Walker does have solid power, but Mays hasn't been knocked out since his Contender Series bout back in 2017. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking the veteran. The dog's coming to eat. But I am not putting Dontel on any parlays. Feeling frisky with the dog here, stylistically. Also in the prelims, we have a banger, man. We get Gabriel Maritinha Bonfim, 27 years old with a 16-1 record, taking on Chaos the Ox Fighter Williams, 30 years old with a 15-3 record. Now, Chaos is stepping in to take on the young prospect after Renat Fakhretdinov pulled out. So credit to him on short notice. This is an absolute great fight. I was excited for the Renat fight as well. But both fights would have been good stylistically and still is a big measuring stick and opportunity for Gabriel, only at 27. But at the same time, a win here for Williams will give him 3 in a row and puts him in a really good place in a very deep welterweight division. Breaking it down, Gabriel is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 4-1 in the UFC, and 12 of his 16 wins are via submission. Now, Chaos trains out of Murcielago MMA. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He's a King of the Cage alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's 2-1 since 2022, and he is rocking a 4.5-inch reach advantage. Now, I am really looking forward to this fight, as this fight could be fight of the night. Both men are known to be aggressive with their striking and like to come forward and stalk their opponents down. But both men have a ton of power, and I'm not sure who will have the power advantage, but I do expect Gabriel to have the speed and the grappling advantage. He also has really good BJJ and wrestling. I think those abilities are going to pay dividends here. So I'm going with Gabriel Bonfim, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays. These are some very evenly matched fights. Then in the prelim headliner, we get the OG of all OGs in women's MMA. We get Angela Overkill Hill, who's 40 years old, almost 41, with a 17-14 record and the number 13 next to her name, taking on Ketlin Escantadinha Souza, 29 years old with a 15-4 record. And I lied. Angela's not almost 41. It's somebody else on this card who's almost 41. But man, have I really enjoyed Angela over the years, especially that the past couple of years when she's had this late career resurgence into 40. But I do wonder how many more fights that she's going to have in her before retirement, because a big win here could even potentially be the end. But she's going to have to face a tough fighter who's in her prime and is full of confidence that she's moved back down to the strawweight division. Breaking this fight down, Angela trains out of Alliance MMA. She has a purple belt in BJJ. She's an Ultimate Fighter and an Invicta alum and former champion with 1 defense. 2 of her last 4 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. She's showing up. She's showing out. She has the most bouts in UFC women's strawweight division history at 25. The most wins in UFC women's strawweight history at 11. The most total fight time in strawweight history at 5 hours, 57 minutes, and 45 seconds. She has the most total fight time in all of UFC women's history at 6 hours, 12 minutes, and 45 seconds. She has the most significant strikes landed in strawweight at 1,951. And she also has the most significant strikes landed in UFC women's history at 2,036. The most total strikes landed in UFC women's strawweight, 2,291. The most unanimous decision wins in strawweight history at 8. The most decision bouts in strawweight history at 20. She's tied with Jorge Masvidal, Clay Guida, Paul Felder, Courtney Casey, and Andrea Lee for most split decision losses in UFC history with 4. She has the most losses in UFC women's history at 14. She's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-2 since 2023. And she does have a 3.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Ketlin has a luta livre style. She's an Invicta alum and former champion. She's on a 2-fight winning streak. She's 2-1 in the UFC, but 2-0 since moving down to strawweight. 8 of her 15 wins are via knockout, and 2 of her 4 losses are via knockout, 2 via submission, so to finish or be finished. And Angela, she's looked really good. 4.5 months ago, she fought very solid against Tabitha Ricci. I thought her volume, her pace, her grappling were just going to be too much for Ketlin to overcome. And I'm excited to see her do it again. I'm taking Angela Hill. I am putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on into the main card. We have Andre Petroski, 33 years old with a 12-4 record, taking on Rodolfo the Black Belt Hunter Vieira, 35 years old with a 10-2 record. Now, this is a tight fight. Neither guy has decent, really good striking. They definitely rely on their grappling. But I'm interested to see if Andre can out-wrestle, MMA wrestle, grapple, if he can outdo it against Rodolfo. And I'm interested to see if Rodolfo can pass Petroski's positions to look for a submission. Because both men are in their primes, and a win here would be very beneficial to their careers at this stage. So I do feel like a lot's on the line. Breaking it down, Andre has a wrestling style. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's an Ultimate Fighter and LFA alum. And all 3 of his losses are via submission. Now, Rodolfo has a BJJ style with a black belt in BJJ. He won gold in the 2015 ADCC Worlds, which is the best of the best. He's also a world champion in 2011, 12, 13, and 14 for the IBJJF Worlds. And in 2011, he also won the absolute category, which is all weight classes. Guy's a stud. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, 2-1 since 2022. 9 of his 10 wins are via submission. And he even has the most arm triangle submissions in UFC history with 4. Now, Andre has taken this fight on short notice as he's stepping in for Jacob Malkoun. And Andre hasn't been the most consistent fighter of late, but he has been active, and Rodolfo really hasn't. I don't think Andre out-grapples Rodolfo, and I don't think he'll be able to take him down and hold him there. So it's going to come down to his striking, and I'm not betting on that leading him to victory. For that reason, I'm taking Rodolfo Vieira, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Moving on, we have the other Bonfim brother, Ismail Mareta Bonfim, 29 years old with a 20-4 record, taking on Nazim the Black Wolf Sadikov, 30 years old with a 9-1-1 record. Now, the Bonfim brothers have fought on the same card quite a few times, and both have been humbled by top competition in the past year or so. They seem like an unstoppable force at one point in time. But here, both of these men are at the beginning of their primes at 29 and 30 and look to be challenging, big challengers in the lightweight division for quite some time. I do think a win here will set them apart from each other and really be a fork in the road for their career trajectories. And that will bring them to the top of the division for some of the top competition. Breaking it down, Ismail is a Jungle Fight, LFA, and Dana White Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 3-1 in the UFC. 9 of his 20 wins are via knockout, and all 4 of his losses are via submission. But he does have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Nazim trains out of Longo's MMA. He's a Ring of Combat, Cage Fury, Fury FC, and Contender Series alum. His last fight was in 2023, which was a draw, and he is 3-0-1 in the UFC, but he does have a 6-inch leg reach advantage. It's interesting, Ismail has a longer arms, but he has way longer legs. Now, Nazim is a solid fighter, but he has been out for more than a year after 2 canceled fights, and I didn't think he looked very great in his last outing against Vacheslav. And Ismail has shown that he's continually improved. He should be the better striker, but the grappling will be very even, so whoever has the better cardio, I think, will fare very well here. But I am taking Ismail Bonfim. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Edmund, the Golden Boy Shabazian, 27 years old with a 13-5 record, taking on Dylan, the Mindless Hulk Budka, 25 years old with a 7-4 record. Now, here are 2 guys who have worked their way to the UFC at a young age, but Dylan is just trying to find his footing after consecutive losses, only at 25 years old, while Edmund has started to see better results, because although he's only 25, he has 18 professional fights, and, he's trying to use his experience to his advantage, but he's definitely continued to live off his striking aggressiveness, which cost him in his last fight against Gerald Mearshart. Breaking it down, Edmund trains out of Extreme Couture. He has a black belt in Shotokan Karate. Excuse me. He's a Dana White Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2023. 11 of his 13 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 5 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Dylan is an Icon FC, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 in the UFC, but he has faced stiff competition in his UFC career. But really, when I look at this, I do think Edmund is going to try and stalk Dylan down and take it to him with his technical boxing. And unless Dylan resorts to getting takedowns, I don't expect him to be able to hang in there on his feet. For that reason, I'm taking the golden boy, Edmund Shabazian. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the co-main event. These final two fights are absolute bangers. We have Calvin, the Boston finisher, Cater, 36 years old, with a 23-8 record and the number 10 next to his name, taking on Yusuf, the Moroccan Devil Zalal, 28 years old with a 16-5-1 record. Now, it is crazy to think Yusuf was out of the UFC a year and a half ago, and after 3 losses and a draw in the UFC, he's now fighting a former title challenger in Cater. Calvin is definitely in desperation mode. He definitely needs a win, but this is a good stylistic matchup for him. Breaking it down, Calvin trains out of the New England cartel. He has a blue belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 5 fights have been fight of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He's an Elite XC alum. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He hasn't won since January of 2022. And 11 of his 23 wins are via knockout. Now, Yusuf is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Factory X with a black belt in BJJ. His last 2 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. 9 of his 16 wins are via submission. And he's on a 6-fight winning streak, 3-0 in his second stint with the UFC. Now, Yusuf has turned into a really well-rounded fighter, and again is coming off 3 submissions in a row. The striking exchanges here are going to be a ton of fun to watch for the fans. I do think Calvin's going to have the technical and defensive striking advantage, where Zalal will have the speed and the grappling advantage. But Calvin has fared well against very good grapplers. But really the biggest wild card here is the creative striking from Yusuf and the pace of attack that he's going to bring. I think Calvin will be able to defend well and outpoint Yusuf with his boxing to get back on the winning track in a very fun and exciting fight. So for that reason, I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking Calvin Cater, the dog's coming to eat. And I am a little shocked by the odds. Big favorite in Yusuf after a 3-fight skid, 36 years old. But Calvin Cater, if you don't know, now you know. Moving on to the main event. We have Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez, 32 years old with a 16-5 record, taking on Jared the Killer Gorilla Cannonier, 40 years old with a 17-8 record and the number 7 next to his name. Now, what an absolute banger of a main event this is. When this fight got booked, I was so stoked. Great opportunity for the RoboCop. But both men are in different positions, as RoboCop is in the middle of his prime, looking to make a run up into the top 10, while Jared has been a top 10, really a top 5 mainstay and title contender for quite some years. But he is almost 41 and has been there, done that. Both are very powerful strikers and are well-rounded fighters, so it should be a doozy. Now, Gregory trains out of Kill Cliff FC. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a Jungle Fight, Island Fights, LFA alum and champion and Contender Series alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He's 3-1 since 2023. 10 of his 16 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 5 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Jared is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of the MMA lab. He has a brown belt in BJJ. 2 of his last 3 fights have been fight of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He has the most significant strikes landed in a UFC middleweight bout, which was 241 against Marvin Vettori. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2023. 10 of his 17 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 8 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. He is also rocking a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Jared has had to face the best of the best since 2017. That's 8 years. He has had mixed results, but typically he wins, finishes, and has fought in 6 5-round fights in his last 7. Now, Gregory hasn't fought a 5-round fight yet, and has only fought to a decision once since 2022 in 3-round fights. I would think Jared will have the advantage with his experience, his toughness, and his power, but as he ages, it's much harder to say, especially after 3 losses. Now, I do think Jared has shown he can still fight at a high level, especially because he recently battled with Nasruddin Imavov this past summer. So I do expect the Killer Gorilla to do enough and outlast him over the course of 5 rounds, but Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez is going to be an absolute problem in the beginning of the fight. I am not putting this on any parlays. I'm super excited as a fight fan, and we get a awesome fight night card stylistically. You got the main event, the co-main. I'm really excited to see the Bonfim brothers, 2 solid grapplers in Petrosky and Rodolfo Vieira, Angela Hill's potential last fight, and early in the card we have 2 ranked fights. So solid fight night. Then next week we go back to the Northwest for the first time in some years. Solid fight night card has definitely taken some hits, but the bantamweight headliner is Henry Cejudo and Song Yadong. That's episode 85. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.